Hey everyone, this is David Jokes, and welcome to the I Am Project, where fitness and philosophy meet. I'm so excited about our first guest here, of course, to kick off the podcast for 2020. And our first guest is Dr. Paul Arciero. Now, I met Dr. Paul quite a few years ago at a convention in the US, and from the time for the first time I met this individual, I was really taken by not only the brilliance of this scientist, but how much he actually cared about the work that he was doing. All right, so a little bit about our first guest today. Dr. Paul J. Arciero is a leading international nutrition and applied physiology scientist, keynote speaker, consultant, and Amazon #1 best-selling author. He has served as a performance physiology and nutrition expert for some of the nation's most elite, including Special Operation Forces, Green Berets, Olympic medalists, world-class professional athletes, the National Hockey League, American Hockey League, boxing, cycling, rowing, as well as thousands of collegiate, high school, and master athletes of all sports and fitness routines. He's been inducted as a fellow of the 3 leading health organizations in the world: the American College of Sports Medicine, the Obesity Society, and International Society of Sports Nutrition. He serves as a senior consultant and scientific advisory board member to the nutrition, fitness, and wellness industries, and was appointed to the 15-member International Protein Board, composed of the leading protein scientists of the world. Dr. Paul is an expert in nutrition, fitness, and mind-body lifestyle interventions to optimize health and physical performance, and has published more than 60 peer-reviewed research studies and 80 published abstracts on performance nutrition and exercise training in the world's most respected journals. His work has been published in the American Journal of Preventive Medicine, Journal of Clinical Medicine, Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience, Frontiers in Physiology, the American Journal of Physiology, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, and the Journal of International Neurophysiological Society, Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, and he has created protein pacing and the PRISE Life protocol. Dr. Paul has given more than 400 invited live interviews around the world, and his work is extensively cited in medical publications by the American Heart Association, Duke Medicine Health News, Science Daily, as well as mainstream popular media. He's been referenced by the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, Prevention, Good Housekeeping, WebMD, O Magazine, Time, Huffington Post, Dr. Radio on XM Series, and the National Public Radio. This is going to be an amazing interview with an amazing scientist, and hope you enjoy the show. Hey everyone, this is David Jokes here with the I Am Project, where fitness meets philosophy. And this is I launched this podcast because, of course, you've seen a lot of the articles I put out on Facebook. I tend to be quite visible, and I really had this belief, of course, being in the fitness industry for so many years, that fitness by itself was a one-dimensional conversation. If we couldn't actually get philosophy or a mindset, we could discuss both in the same conversation. It was really difficult to move people forward because there's lots of great information, but mindset was a limiting factor. And I had the great privilege of actually meeting Dr. Paul Arciero several years ago at an event in the U.S., and I loved his message, and I really felt like this was a brother from another mother, somebody that I knew what he said, but more importantly, I knew why he was saying it. I could actually feel his heart and the genuine motive behind why he was doing what he's doing, because this is one busy human being. Dr. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me here today.
David, this is a treat. Thank you for having me. And thank you for those beautiful words. Those were heartfelt for sure. And I felt the same about you. There was something that resonated when you and I met and interacted, and you put it really well. Brother from another mother. That's great.
Well, it was interesting. You shared a little bit of your story from the stage. Again, I've heard it a couple times. What are the passions for your drive within this world, this body of research? I mean, it's not an easy thing that you do. It's very time consuming. You have to be committed, but you had a real personal reason for this exploration. Could you share that a little bit?
Yeah, it's always a little bit emotional for me to talk about it, but yeah, I grew up with somebody, as we were talking about before we actually started recording, was had some really hard hits to my self-worth when I was younger. And I just did not have a good start to the world in terms of my intellectual, mental capacity and worth. And so I had to kind of find other areas of my being that resonated with me out in the world, and that became an emotional connection to others. I just had this real strong bond with my parents, but then also my maternal grandfather and paternal grandmother, and they became my sources of wisdom at a very young age. So when they became ill, my father ended up getting a very rare form of cancer and passing away at the young age of 61. He was a lieutenant Marine, this guy that I just looked up to as, an idol in the sense of, his physical presence. He was not a person of a lot of words, but just very stoic and graceful. And then my two grandparents I just adored, and I would write letters back and forth to them. So yeah, I share that from the stage because for me, that was my connection to the world, because I needed to find something else other than my mental, intellectual capacity to resonate with the world, and it was my emotional connection with others, and then my physical being.
Right. So now, one of the reasons for our discussion today, we're talking about the release of your second book, and the PRISE Life Protein Pacing, and it's.
Did yours come in yet, by the way, David?
No, actually, hasn't yet. I'm going to go check today. I know, okay. I know. I'm like a kid at Christmas going, when is it going to get here?
Yeah.
It was interesting when I was, I was actually reading a bit of the background around your book, and something that, and I love what you said about this. We talked before we start recording, kind of streamlining the information provided by the various science bodies out there, as well-meaning as they are. Now, if you go on Amazon.com and you Google, if you put in Amazon.com, you put in the word fitness as far as titles, 200,000 plus titles. If you look at personal development, 70,000 plus titles, not just on Amazon. Then I went on Google, 3,670,000,000 hits for personal development, and 6,560,000,000 hits for fitness.
Under a second too, by the way.
Yeah. Point. Yeah. So I love what you're doing, in the ability and the idea of streamlining it, because I think I spend most of my time trying to bat the confusion and myths out of the air, and trying to strip down the non-essentials so that there's a basic piece in the format that people can work with, because people are really super confused.
Yeah, no, boy. It's amazing, and the information is just getting more and more abundant. And so, yeah, the goal that I have, having been now, like you, invested and committed and dedicated to this for so many decades, I wanted to find those things that kept on falling up to the top. I say falling because, these things are always falling away out of view, but the things that kept on coming and resurfacing and being there year after year. And those are the ones that had meaning to me. And here's why. Usually when things like that have staying power over the long term and don't have the ebbs and flows like some of these fads do, and I don't mean to throw the keto, diet under the bus here. However, back 30 years ago, it was very popular. And then it disappeared, and then it resurfaced again in between, and here it is again. It's kind of starting its way down again. But I think there's a time and place for it, and we know that in certain cases it can be very effective in those two forms of epilepsy. But we just don't have a real, in some periodization training models of endurance athletics, it can also be very effective. But my main point here is that what I was committed to was finding those established, long-standing, scientifically backed and proven lifestyle strategies of fitness and nutrition and mind-body wellness that stood the test of time. And that's really what the book is founded on, is what is it that has stayed the course of time. And so what I've done over the last 3 decades, it has taken those defining principles and foundations of fitness and nutrition and mind-body wellness lifestyle, and put those into an easy to follow lifestyle program. And that's what the PRISE acronym stands for.
Right. So now that you've worked with numerous groups, numerous individuals, from the military to high-level athletes to within obesity research, and you sit on a board that actually deals with that specifically. Um, so we look at the PRISE protocol. So let's just quickly, the PRISE protocol as related to people struggling with weight. So how does that actually eliminate a lot of the confusion? How will that move people forward? Because there's lots of choices. In fact, there's 6 billion choices. So so how is this protocol? So what will it do for people that are struggling with weight right now?
Right. So the research is very compelling. It's very supported in that, so for someone that's interested in weight loss, these 5 principles of the PRISE Life: protein pacing, number 1, resistance, functional movement exercises that you teach so eloquently and effectively to people, high intensity interval exercise, which we now know is not just reserved for the most elite, highly trained athletes in the world, but it's highly effective and just as effective for people that have just had a heart attack or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or diabetes, or, you know, on the far end of the health spectrum. Interval exercise is extremely beneficial. And then stretching being extremely important. And then the final letter in the acronym of PRISE is endurance or aerobic exercise. So just by following those 5 strategies, the protein pacing, 5-6 days a week, interspersed with a day or 2 of intermittent nutritional fasting, is extremely effective for people looking for weight loss. And then the 4 main principles of human movement: resistance, functional exercise, high intensity interval, stretching, and endurance, 1 day a week for people that are interested in weight loss. They do not have to be things that you have to knock yourself out, you know, and completely exhaust yourself with. But it's a simple strategy to follow, and it's been proven most effective in people that have to improve their quality of health with weight loss to benefit them in other areas of their life.
Right. And I like what you said when you talked about the frequency of training. And I think this is where people really come off the rails, where you see people that are taking a body that's, let's say, deconditioned, a bit malnourished, and they're trying to hit it 4 or 5 days a week. They try to, and they're going hard. And more power to all that intensity or that mindset around it. But is it necessary to exhaust yourself on a daily basis to achieve weight loss?
No. So, I like to use, like you, I like to use the elite athlete, right? I mean, if you watch the elite athletes in their daily routine of performance, they are not exhausting themselves and completely working themselves to exhaustion on a daily basis. That would be what we call contraindicated for them.
Right.
It would be counterproductive. And so, using them as the baseline model of why they can perform at the level that they do is because they have many built-in opportunities to rejuvenate, recuperate, replenish. And that's oftentimes with complete days off of just rest, stretching, and recovery.
Right.
And so, the normal person has to do that just as much. And here's also why, David, which I think is really important. We have so many other life responsibilities and life stresses that are draining our tank, sometimes without any physical exertion, right? I mean, think about the mental exhaustion and stress that we have around finances, around personal relationships, not just with other people, but with ourselves.
Right.
And then our physical health that we're always challenged with. So to think that we have to abide by this rule of going to a gym or going to a fitness class and exhausting ourselves in order for us to gain health improvement just does not make any physiological or biochemical sense. And so, this process of building in these days to help your body recover and respond, so that you have what we call resilience, right? If there's one defining characteristic that is common, and I call it the common theme among all successful performers in any walk of life, it's resilience. And they're resilient because they allow themselves time to recover and recuperate.
Right. Well, and I think what people fail to realize is that exercise is a form of stress.
Yeah,
And so it sets the stage for potential change. But that, of course, occurs when we have adequate sleep patterns, our nutrition is well looked after, and we have recovery days.
that's
And
right.
it's a really
Ron
hard
Sellier, yeah.
it's a hard idea to sell to people at times. So thank you for reinforcing that.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, you and I are on the same mission.
Yeah. Now, just quickly, now you were talking about athletes and the reference to athletes. So the protein pacing, now we talked about people on a health journey. What about for athletes? Now, athletes, I I worked with a lot of athletes over the years, and I'm just appalled at they're willing to work hard and play at a high level, but nutrition, it just doesn't always seem to be their forte either, or their focus. How is the PRISE protocol for athletes? Again, it's going to be a little bit of a different process or a different focus for them as it is for the person on the weight loss challenge.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're right. It's an afterthought for many of them, right? They've been
Right.
gifted with this beautiful, an amazing ability with talent that some of them have, but then also, as you said, this determination, this hard work and determination. And nutrition is often just considered as an afterthought of what they have to do. But it's changing. I think more and more athletes at the highest level and those that want to sustain a long career understand and appreciate and commit to a healthy level of nutrition. But here's what's so fascinating. In many ways, individuals that are on a health journey, particularly those that are looking to lose weight and increase and enhance their health. Maybe they have diabetes, they have heart disease, they have inflammation, they have some other comorbidity, some other disease process that's also impacting their overall quality of life and health, other than maybe carrying around some excess body fat, particularly in the abdominal region. In many ways, when those people are venturing on a health journey and wanting to lose weight, their nutritional requirements, although their total caloric intake is being reduced, the quality of their nourishment needs to go up. And that's where protein pacing plays a critical role, because in their quest and in their journey to effect healthy change with their body composition and their disease risk state, as they're reducing their calories, they compromise their nourishment,
Right.
and they compromise their body's ability to maintain that healthy lean muscle mass. So their protein requirement actually goes up, and it becomes much more similar to athletes that are striving to excel and even put on more healthy lean muscle mass. So the two groups with the highest protein requirement are individuals that are looking to lose body weight while consuming a lower quantity of calories to help preserve and maintain that critical lean body mass, and athletes that are looking to increase their level of lean muscle mass. And for the other groups of athletes that are maybe endurance athletes, those that are not looking necessarily for increasing lean body mass, but boosting their immune system, enhancing their recovery, allowing their muscles to function at the highest level, their protein requirement needs to be somewhere in the middle range of what the requirements are, but they need to make sure that they're fueling their body with those optimal, high quality nutrients.
Right. Yeah, well, and again, it's such a confusing conversation, and the fact that you've been able to kind of distill, the the best concepts in best long-standing concepts in nutritional and exercise physiology over the years, and I think that's the important piece because, as you said, things come and go, and people love the new idea as a shiny object, but if you look over time, there's things that are going to stand out as obvious truths that really have stood the test of time. And how freeing is that? How freeing is that for the individual to know that, for decades and longer that we've been observing this stuff through a microscope, that we can actually see that these are the positive points in the grid. And it's just a matter of, well, really, I think it's important for individuals to educate themselves, like, reading material that you put out, that you've so wonderfully distilled it down so that everyone can get it. Because I'm a huge proponent of it's great that you are willing to follow a path, but it's more important to be intelligent about why you're following it. And
Absolutely. Education is empowering and edifying. And like you just said, it doesn't have to be as complicated as we've made it to be in many cases. And
right,
even, serving on these organizations and as a fellow in many of these leading, the American College of Sports Medicine, the Obesity Society, the International Journal of the International Society of Sport Nutrition, they have wonderful and well-intentioned public health messaging around nutrition, around weight loss, around fitness and exercise. But what ends up happening is there's too much noise oftentimes with those recommendations from the public's perception. I mean, these are well-founded and scientifically backed recommendations, but there's a lot of noise when it's perceived by the public who's just looking to simply incorporate these things into their daily routine.
right,
It is absolutely overwhelming. And if you were to follow, just take one example, the American College of Sports Medicine fitness recommendations, it would have people exercising for 7 to 14 hours a week. That's an hour a day. That's a lot of extra time when you look at what those recommendations are. So my point to all of that is, how do you live a life around that? And I think it sets people up internally, mentally, for failure, because many of them just simply can't uphold to that level. So what I've tried to do is distill out the essential, as you described, long-standing tenets of health, and put it into an easier to follow daily lifestyle strategy so that people can do it without feeling overwhelmed. And instead of having less than 20% of the population meeting these exercise and nutrition recommendations, to have now 80% meeting those recommendations.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, it's just, I mean, it's really exciting. I'm thrilled that you actually took the time from everything that you're doing, because you are doing everything, it seems. Every time I try to track you down, you're in a different part of the U.S. doing, you're always on some stage or in some laboratory doing this incredible work. But to distill it down, I know it's got to be a labor of love, because to put all that information into a book, it can't be an easy thing to do.
It's not. And David, I'm glad you brought that up. That's why I have a series of 5 books coming out. You can't contain all of this in one. But actually, in all seriousness, this one is the working resource for people. This provides the science behind why it's so important for you to follow it. It goes into detail about defining what the 5 tenets of protein pacing are, in addition to the other ones that I mentioned, the mind-body wellness and the intermittent nutritional fasting. But then also in the importance of recovery. But then the follow-up books, the next one will be a 30-day playbook. So it'll actually be a very specifically designed resource for people that they can follow on a moment-by-moment basis for 30 days. And I actually hold your hand through the entire process of following the PRISE Life. And then after that is the cookbook, and then which will be extremely helpful for people in terms of their food choices. And then the handbook, that will be just a very simple guide that they can bring with them wherever they are. And then the last one will be a Train the Trainers, which I would love to recruit you as someone who's such a leader in the field. And then the final piece of this that I think for helping people is the app, right? So I have a PRISE Life app that's free, so people can download it. It's on both the Apple Store as well as the Google Play, and it accompanies all of the 5 books.
Perfect.
So thanks for that. Yeah, I think that will be really helpful.
Yeah, well, and it's and I love the follow-up, because again, like you said, it's a lot of stuff to shove into one book, which could be overwhelming, and to be able to move us all through different stages of thought, and just master one piece and get that idea kind of established and move on to the next. I think it's a beautiful transition, and and I'm looking forward to the whole journey through all of it, because as long as I've been in this industry, I still find that there's still ways of expressing this information that I still need to get a little better at, because I gotta admit, I like verbiage. I like the big language. I worked hard at developing an education kind of from the dirt, and it felt good to actually have a thought process that was a bit different than the average person, and to have a vocabulary that was a bit more extensive. And And my ego really rocked that out for quite a while until I realized that nobody could understand what I was saying. But it felt good to say it. And right.
It's cathartic, but I just have to say this. I've read your work, and it's intimidating for me to hear that had struggled with that, because when I read what you write, to me, it resonates. To me, I understand it. And it connects with me, and I know it does with a lot of people, but I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's not an easy task, and it hasn't been for me. I come at it from more of a scientist, objective, sterile, approach of disseminating this information. So for me to be able to convey it in a way that everyone can understand it has been a work in progress, but I think I've been able to do that here. But for me to read your work, it's boy, it hits me inside. And so I thank you for what you do, because I think this combination is tremendously needed.
Well, it's I know we're kind of running into the last bit of our time here, but I remember something you saying, and this is the very first time I saw you speak, and you're talking about you're doing some research around obesity, weight loss, fasting with the isogenic system. And you had mentioned there was one lady that you were speaking with that you had connected with, and it was interesting to listen to you talking, because yes, you're talking about clinical, sterile, very objective, process, but there's humans involved, and there's people at the end of these studies, and one lady that had a significant weight loss, and just the way you described just how that made you feel, the fact that she was so elated and her life had changed so dramatically, and you actually you played a role in actually walking her through those steps, and the fact that what excited you more wasn't so much the fact that there's a publication, but it was just how much the lives of these people had changed due to the work and effort and patience of you and the team that had gone there. And that's what I took away. All the other the charts and the numbers, the percentages, I didn't remember any of that. What I did remember is that you really cared about these people and the results. And that's why I had to go seek you out, because the science
that's the greatest compliment I could receive. So thank you, because life is about recognizing the significance in others, not their successes. Successes come and go. It's not defining who we are, but when you can recognize somebody's significance, then that has power, and that has the staying power. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So where can we find you? So I'm going to, of course, at the end of this podcast, I'm going to put some links here. So where is Dr. Paul Arciero? Where can you be found in the social media world?
Well, yes. So I want to build that and keep spreading this message as you are, but they can find me on Facebook on PRISELife.com. So it's the same as the title of the book. You can also find me in Facebook with my whole name, Paul Arciero, and the same with Twitter and Instagram. It's PRISE Life on both Twitter and Instagram. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. The books are available on Amazon and will continue to be coming out all through 2020. So thank you so much for having me, David. This has been a treat for me. So thank you.
Yeah, well, it's a heck of a way to kick off 2020 and the beginning of this podcast series. So huge appreciation, my friend. And one day, we'll aside from these virtual conversations we get to have, let's just actually sit down and have a cup of coffee with you. So let's make sure before this year is out that we actually make that happen.
We will.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.